Charles, there's been something of a persistent technical problem since that Amazon Web Services outage last week that I think I've got licked. Hopefully people will not have any buffering or outages during this broadcast. How are you there in the residential library? Looking very sharp today.
Oh, thank you very much, Jason. I'm actually in the working space inside the great room. The residential library is a sanctuary that I'm pleased to report I have no more room for books.
Wow.
I have so many
Need a
books
new
in
library.
I need a new apartment, I guess. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I have the book doctor's coming back on December 1st for 2 nights, I think. So we'll have to discuss what to do with him. But no, I think there's a lot of great news. And I noticed that you've been secretly hiring a new interior decorator, and you've got quite, the Oval Office there in your apartment with the, I mean, it's amazing. Trump can knock down the East Wing. You've managed to knock down the neighboring buildings, and you have a lawn behind you. That's rather impressive.
I heard that Trump is going to rename it the Ovulation Office after Monica Lewinsky or something like that.
Well, there is a Trump tweet that I saw that he said, "I'm thinking of calling the ballroom the Monica Lewinsky Ballroom." Allegedly, Trump on Truth Social sent it out. I don't know if it's really him. If he did, I think it's hilarious. But it's a good point. It's kind of like in American politics, we have a gigantic family feud where, you can't bring up the elephant or the donkey or the ass in the room. And the ass in the room is that putting this idiot Mamdani in as mayor is not the first time that we put an idiot on a pedestal. Whether it's George W. Bush, who frankly, when you look into his life story, I actually know his brother, but I know a lot of people who could have been plucked from obscurity and given the roles that George W. had. And think about the people he had around. He had an actual dickhead, Dick Cheney, as Secretary of Defense. And think of the trouble that Cheney and Halliburton and the Reagan wing, who were manipulating Ronald Reagan, maybe for his whole presidency, but certainly for his second term. Think of the trouble and damage those people have caused us, right? And George W. Bush, by his own account, was a blithering, falling down drunk at his 40th birthday party. He writes about it himself. You don't have to guess. He says that he had a big ass party in Colorado with his wife, and he woke up, he passed out somewhere, and his wife said, "Listen, you've got a simple choice, me or Jim Beam," which apparently was what he was drinking, that bourbon. And to his great credit, it's not easy to just give up drinking, in one fell swoop. It's a very difficult thing to do that. So I give him credit for that, and he did get back on course to a more sensible life. But who is his first backer? And a money backer in Harken Energy, George fucking Soros, and with the Harvard endowment. That was his first. That got him.
Wait a minute. George Soros backed
George W. Bush. Absolutely, it's a chapter and verse on it.
Wow.
I know about this because at Dillon Reed, I personally was trying to do something similar. In 1980, the Tax Act of 1986. Destroyed the leveraged real estate and oil drilling businesses and I think it was by design. People in the Reagan cabinet, possibly even Nick Brady, who wasn't yet in the cabinet, figured out that the hustlers in those two industries were principally Democrats, or funding Democrats. And so there was a plan, I think, to change the calculus of money flowing into the political system, the Tax Act of 1986. But anyway, what that did, I immediately said, well, wow, that's an opportunity. And people are going to need oil and gas over time. And the prices of all these, drilling companies and oil fields and projects and real estate in Texas and Colorado and elsewhere were on the floor. We have a lot of money in investment funds. Why don't I go down there and try to snap up properties at a discount? Well, that's in essence what I didn't know at the time, that Soros and Harvard's endowment had the same plan. Billions of dollars were to go in to snap up these projects for cents on the dollar. And they needed a politically connected person to be the front person for that. And that person was George W. Bush. I also happen to know the guy who was the architect of all that, Alan Quasha, whose brother was in the CIA, whose father was in the CIA. And, it's Alan Quasha. I know him from Life for Key in New York. But anyway, so this was the project of George W. Bush, of the people behind George W. Bush, and the principal money, other than Harvard, was George Soros. So he backed the Bushes.
When was that, Charles? There's so many articles here about George Soros going against
1986.
Bush. Ooh, so yeah. So later he goes against Bush. I wonder
Right.
if that's all theater, Rand Paul.
No, I see what people love. Shrewd investors will not be found, generally speaking, blabbing on CNBC, right? Because shrewd investors understand that great investment opportunities come along infrequently and do not need to be shared, right? So one of the things that Soros and real hedge funds, and hedge funds today are basically leveraged long vehicles principally. They generally don't take big short positions because the market's been straight up for decades. But in the days of yore, when Soros made his mark, he certainly understands how to profit when companies are overvalued, and you can either short their equity or you short their debt, or in big situations, as Soros did with the Bank of England, when you realize that a country has a gigantic amount of debt and that its leadership is stupid, stuck on stupid, you can make even more money shorting the debt of a fucked up country, which is what Soros has been doing around the world, and I would argue more recently against the United States of America and other Western countries. So, he's a law, and there's nothing, and I hasten to add, there's nothing wrong with shorting. It's actually an important function, because if you don't have people out there who are sniffing for and I say that as somebody who encouraged people to short GE in 2007, debt and equity of GE. If you don't have those type of people, then markets go, we're in excess now, but they go to super excess, and you get problems such as, have brought down past civilizations, frankly, with excessive speculation. So it's a good counterweight to have shorting. But what is not good is to get in the business of funding political candidates, knowing that their policies are stuck on stupid, and give chump change to Bush or Obama or Mamdani as you put on your short positions against New York City and New York State and maybe U.S. government debt. That is bad stuff. And that, I think, is what is going on in New York City right now and across blue states. I mean, you have this certified fool, Gavin Newsom, who's not even handsome anymore, strutting around like a peacock, just announcing that after the 2026 election, he's probably going to run for president. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris, who blew $2.5 billion, not to mention other people, and in 107 days, saying, well, don't count me out in 2028. Yeah, out. Well,
isn't
3
that
strikes,
stupid?
you're out.
I mean, Charles, this is her saying, ooh, I might run again. It's like one of these videos where somebody just totally gets their ass beaten and then they stand up and continue threatening the guy. It's like, what are you doing?
Or it's like Liza Minnelli asking, do I look fat in this pantsuit? No, you look fat, period, in anything. But no, it's ridiculous. So we've had this theater of the absurd where, if you think about it, when Obama, on election night in 2008, I was actually in Kuwait. And so I was able to, when I woke up, was, Obama was just going to see his supporters, or when I was watching TV, I should say, he was just going to see his supporters at like 1:00 in the morning, Chicago time. And instantly, the press was, put his head on Mount Rushmore. It's a new era. He's a superstar. Fucking guy hadn't even been inaugurated. And at the time, and I'm getting to the title of the excellent art department's latest masterpiece. We actually have Barack Obama just precisely where we need him at the moment. And the left doesn't even understand. This is a Sun Tzu moment. And I say that because we have different pieces in place. We have the public certain at this stage that the FBI has been corrupt for decades. I mean, you just can't go out there and try to say, oh, no. Millions of thousands, tens of thousands of good FBI agents. It's the leadership that's bad. Bullshit. The FBI is rotten to the core. The FBI was investigating Valerie Jarrett, Barack Obama, and they interviewed Barack Obama in the transition period between the election of 2008 and the inauguration. They ultimately jailed Rod Blagojevich for his role, supposedly, in orchestrating the sale of or trying to sell the right to name the successor to Barack Obama as the senator from Illinois. And the prime candidate for that was Valerie Jarrett. Rod Blagojevich has now been pardoned by Trump, right? So he's out of prison. He can sing like a canary. It does not take, even somebody with 80 IQ points to realize that the correct thing to do to break through this bullshit in Chicago is send some FBI people to meet with Blagojevich, say, now we finally need to understand what was going on in the run-up to the replacement of Barack Obama's Senate seat. We need to understand what was truly going on. Show us the entire file on the interview of Barack Obama. What did he say? Was he under oath? If not, why not? And what was really going on with the transition period, where Hillary Clinton claims that it wasn't until the end of November that she was appointed Secretary of State, when we have been through in countless broadcasts. We know that's bullshit. We know that deal was struck most likely by June of 2008. So I bring this up to say, in this book, this piece of garbage by Valerie Jarrett, and in this piece of garbage by Barack Obama, there is very little said both about the Senate seat issue and about the transition. Specifically, the decision to name Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State to allow her to keep in place her husband's alleged role in this Clinton Foundation, which in November 2008 did not have articles, did not have bylaws, did not have authority to do anything that it was doing, and also did not have audits, which were required in Arkansas, in New York, in California, in numerous other places. So why did the FBI let all of this slide? And you now have the opportunity to go and take B-Rock. You first go to Valerie Jarrett and say, listen, I would be rather rough with her, but, that's why I'm not in the FBI. You say, listen, fool, you left the White House. You were there for 8 years as the top advisor to Barack Obama. So you must know everything that there is to know about Barack Obama's role in the White House. I would go to her and I'd say, look, we have all your emails. Okay, because the FBI should be able to get those. We know the FBI was in the business of surveilling 8 Republican senators, and 1 congressman that we know of as part of Arctic Frost. And we still don't know all the details. But in all this, the first question is, if we're investigating, how many alias emails does Valerie have? And why was it required for Valerie to go live with Michelle and Barack in the Kalorama mansion in Washington, D.C. for over a year? What is really going on with this decision in 2014 in January to set up the B-Rock Foundation to be a presidential library having physical custody of records? What with Bob Bauer doing that, and Anita Dunn, his wife, ending up with a very prominent role in the Biden White House.
Charles, sorry,
what was really going on with all these presidential records?
Look at this, Charles.
And how come you've got this monstrosity, this toilet bowl, Death Star in Chicago? We're in 2025. Where are the actual presidential records of the B-Rock term? And the fact that they're in limbo in theory, makes it very difficult to prosecute people in the Obama administration for their rampant criminality, which I think Tulsi Gabbard is now saying publicly that what's going on here is treason and insurrection. This is not, parking violations, slipping on a banana peel, sleeping late for the final exam. This is treason, the penalty for which is death. So you now need to separate people like Valerie Jarrett, who's not, as far as I know, married to anyone or to Barack or Michelle Obama. So she can't invoke that kind of spousal privilege to say, I'm not going to talk. She has to talk. And you can, if you're trying to flush out what really happened, she was joined at the hip with Barack Obama. So, what was really going on in June of 2008? How, with a straight face, do you sign an MOU where you hire a conflicted party, Cheryl Mills, to represent Barack Obama in the transition team? She's on the board of the Clinton Foundation. How could she represent Barack Obama and give, independent advice? Of course she can't. Why was there an MOU in the first place? It's meaningless. Who did the diligence on the Clinton Foundation to write the MOU? How come nothing is said about the conference that was held in Hong Kong in the beginning of December, Hong Kong time, for a number of days, where Bill Clinton held himself out as running the Clinton Foundation when no such information is contained in legally required Forms 990 or state or foreign filings. They host a session. Hillary's been announced publicly. She's going to be the next Secretary of State. And here's the grifter in chief, or the grifter at large in Hong Kong, breaking bread with hundreds of other grifters who want favors out of the incoming Obama administration. And nobody in the press says anything about this. People are carping about the freaking $300 million ballroom complex when nobody cares about $1 billion for a library in Chicago on once protected land that is actually a monstrosity, and will not hold any of the presidential records. Nobody cares about that $1 billion mess. Nobody seems to care about the $64 million that was stolen in 2004, in and after 2004, for the monstrosity of the complex in Little Rock, or the fact that John Glasgow, a competent CPA, the chief financial officer of the construction firm, disappeared in January of 2008, and his body was found, I think, in 2015, or parts of his body in 2015. Just the head. Nobody seems to care about that at the FBI. There's no statute of limitations on murder. And we're just politely, distracted by the spectacle of an idiot, another idiot after DeCrazio and Adams, and now you have this idiot Mamdani. We're distracted with that, and we're not saying, wait a minute. Bill Gates has backed away from climate change being a serious issue. It's junk science in quotes. And, here are mansion-loving morons, the Clintons, the Obamas, Bernie Sanders, and others, multiple mansions. Bernie's got no kids living at home. I think he wouldn't even endorse one of his kids who's running for office, or vice versa. And the Clintons are, empty nesters. They have 2 adjacent mansions in Chappaqua, another one in Washington, D.C. B-Rock has 4, and we're supposed to live in 15-minute cities in 300-square-foot apartments, drinking shit water and washing it down with insects. Enough of this. This is
now. Wait a minute, Charles. There's a couple of things, because we only have about 5 minutes, and I wanted to take you through this. You mentioned this MOU with the Clinton Foundation. For some reason, the Honorable whatever and Dear Senator whatever is blocked out. I guess that's Obama. But did you see who signed this?
Kerry.
Dick Lugar and Kerry.
Yeah, no, that's standard. So the way that this works is when you're dealing with, this is a letter that went to members of the Senate, I think, Foreign Relations Committee, and the custom is that such a letter is signed by the chairman of the committee, in that case, Democrat Kerry, and the ranking member, Dick Lugar, the senior most
He's the guy
Republican.
Who got jammed up in Russia with Obama.
No, I understand that, and I understand, but this is a trail. You had the same people who are determined to get to the bottom. Eric Swalwell, right? Eric Small Penis, the idiot, is now saying that no Democrat should be able to run for president in 2028 unless he or she pledges to demolish this ballroom that Trump is going to. It's such an affront.
What?
That's yeah. The guys, I mean, it's as if I actually love those scenes with Eddie Murphy in the barbershop in Harlem and stuff. And we play, particularly like it when he plays the white Jewish guy in that. That's hilarious. But it's like you have one of these crazy Harlem barbershop waiting rooms. And those are the Solons in the Democratic Party, the wise elder statesmen of the Democratic Party. One is stupider than the next.
Why would you destroy it? That's idiotic.
The good news for Republicans is that Swalwell is stupid on issues where 80% of the country agree that he's wrong, and yet the Democrats are putting him out. Gavin Newsom and the fatso governor of Illinois, as if anybody gives a shit what that moron says. And with the government shut, Trump is just doing deals, getting shit done, making our lives better. And now the Democrats apparently have floated the trial balloon. They asked for 3.5 trillion, 350 billion over 10 years of subsidies. And of course, it's a perpetual subsidy. So even that number is wrong. Now they're saying, on second thought, we don't want that. Just give us 15 billion. That's like that scene from Mike Myers' movie. I'm demanding a ransom of $1 billion. I mean, $1 million. I mean, you can't be asking for 3.5 trillion and say you'll settle for 15 billion. I mean, it's ridiculous. You give them nothing. I'd ask the Democratic Party to pay back, $1 trillion as a condition.
It's a bit similar to that guy Samir Masi when I offered him $100 for his evidence video. He said, "Ha ha, that's absurd. Nothing less than 250." And I was like, "Ooh, you drive a hard bargain, Samir Masi."
Exactly. And these are people, and Pete Buttigieg wouldn't endorse Mamdani, but says he has all the capabilities of making a great mayor. Based on how does he have the judgment to make that comment? Yeah. He destroyed South Bend over.
Exactly. That's like me telling you who's a good brain surgeon. What the hell do I know?
Yeah, or I don't know, me giving advice on how to fix a computer. I mean, it's like, I don't know how to do that. Right? Anyway, a lot of, which is typically a calm period of time, government shut. I mean, whenever they open it up, they're probably going to go right back on vacation again, which is what they generally do. You've got Halloween coming up. Greg Gutfeld said, something about, what did he say? He said that he's never been, he can't imagine being as frightened as Joy Behar's gynecologist. But, we got Halloween coming up.
That's the future of garbage. Well, Charles, we only have about another minute before we're going to make our way over to the First Amendment Forum, where people will be able to join us by subscribing on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I remembered Halloween last night because I noticed hot girls were walking around almost naked last night. So I guess that was the party night for Halloween this year. It's probably coming out in the middle of the week or something like that.
Next Friday.
Is it Friday?
Yeah. It's gonna be hot. Should be pretty hopping on Friday night, I would think.
Oh yeah, I guess. Well, so why were these girls dressed up last night? I don't know. I guess any excuse.
They were trying to lure you into
Not something. Me. They weren't too interested in me, I can tell you that. But so Charles, we're going to talk some more about Valerie Jarrett. I'm in this presidential Oval Office for our discussion about Barack Obama. I don't know, that whole memorandum of understanding being signed by Lugar, us still not knowing what Obama and Lugar were doing when they got detained in Russia. Putin is remarkably calm considering that whole Trump meeting got canceled, but we got a lot of stuff to discuss. Let's end this right now and we'll head over to the First Amendment Forum. We'll see if this reconfiguring of servers has resolved the problem. Hopefully these technical problems, or at least this week's technical problems,